Brainiac was obvious. It made absolute sense that he would be our big bad.
It moves from planet to planet. It's known as the Collector of Worlds, but its true name is Brainiac.
To me, Jeff Johns and Gary Frank did an incredible run on Brainiac.
We really decided to take a run at making him colder and more emotionally distant and ancient. And that version of Brainiac did heavily influence what we're doing in the show. And his crazy skull ship, which is really cool and iconic.
Brainiac's never been seen before like this.
Son of Krypton, your world is at an end.
This is Krypton, and this is the story of the House of L.
My name is Adam Strange. Someone from the future is coming to destroy Krypton.
Because your grandson becomes the greatest hero in the universe.
Superman.
I've been having this vision.
We are not alone in the universe.
Either rise or you fall.
It's known as the Collector of Worlds, but its true name is Brainiac.
Son of Krypton, your world is at an end.
I gotta do what I gotta.
Help me find a way to stop him.
You have to find the fortress.
I gotta do what I
It's time you learned the truth.
Brainiac is going to rip Kandor from the ground and enslave all of us.
light 'em up.
You are a Zod.
Fight with honor and fight without mercy. I gotta do what I gotta do.
Once this cape is gone, our time's up. Superman will have been wiped from existence.
Light 'em up, light 'em up. Light 'em up, light 'em up, light 'em up.
Hey everybody, it's Charlie. We have to freak out about Brainiac here. They finally confirmed that he's the big bad of the show. I think we all had suspicions when we saw that last trailer, and you see those tendrils floating from the corner of space like, oh, those look like the tendrils of Brainiac's skull ship. And albeit this version looks very Injustice-y, it's always interesting to see where their visual inspiration comes from. Because a lot of the functional design of Krypton comes from DCEU and that Zack Snyder prequel scene from Man of Steel. But it looks like they're also pulling a little bit from the Injustice universe, just a more hardcore take on the Superman mythos. Because we also got that other version of Brainiac 5 on Supergirl, which looks completely different. So after posting this picture really early this morning, it seems like immediately people were more on board with this version of Brainiac. I think just because he looks a little closer to comic book Brainiac. So if you are finding me for the first time, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. I will be doing Krypton videos, just depending on interest level, so if you guys want me to do videos for every episode with comic book Easter eggs or just a couple videos, no worries. As long as you click that bell and enable alerts, you'll get all the videos. Obviously, things start March 21st, so it's still a little ways away, but Krypton is going to be a Wednesday night show, so it's not going to conflict with any of the Flash or Arrow videos or any of the other DC TV stuff that I do. And there is actually a little bit of news about Titans and Nightwing and all that stuff, but I'll mention that at the end of the video because it's not totally relevant to what's going on Krypton. So, the really important thing that you probably noticed when they're talking about Brainiac is the comic book panels that they showed you. So if you want to know which comic book run to read to prepare for this, I would recommend starting with Jeff Johns' new Krypton arc, which was actually a while ago. It happened way before Convergence, and then also read a little bit of Convergence Brainiac, because that's when they sort of turned him into the Collector of Worlds. Like, for the most part, he's known as Brainiac. There's a couple iterations depending on which time period you're set in. Like, he continues to upgrade himself. And then when Jeff Johns got to this new Krypton arc, he sort of re-envisioned him, like as he says, as a more colder, ancient figure, the Collector of Worlds. The Convergence run that happened right before DC's big rebirth event did that again, made him even more ancient, sort of existing outside of space-time in a much bigger figure. So it seems like this version is just a combination of that new Krypton Brainiac, Injustice Brainiac, and then Convergence Brainiac. So like his skull ship is much bigger than traditional Brainiac's skull ship. It looks much more ancient, really haggard. This version of Brainiac might be the version that we pick up with immediately when the show starts, before he starts messing with the timeline Terminator style. So if you haven't seen any of the other promos, you don't know what's going on. The basic premise of the show is that Terminator Skynet style, Brainiac wants to get rid of Superman because he gets his ass handed to him so many times. So his solution is to go back into Krypton's history, mess with the House of L to erase Superman from present day. So Adam Strange here, who's holding Superman's cape and telling him, you need to help save your grandson's legacy. He needs to explain who Superman is, basically. Who are you talking about? My grandson? What the hell's going on? It sounds like he doesn't even know that much about the Fortress of Solitude that they're standing in here. The really cool thing about the show, the season 1 is only 10 episodes. Brainiac changes Superman's history, erases him from the timeline. Season 1 is all about preventing or fixing that change. They said that, Terminator style, their changes to the timeline won't completely reverse things. Like when Barry fixed Flashpoint, he didn't fix everything. Like you can't put everything back the way you found it. Time just doesn't work that way. There are always ripples.
There we go. Things are back to how they should be. Well, for me, anyway. For you... well, I guess you'll just have to wait and find out.
So whatever they do in the finale this season is going to change the timeline just a little bit. So imagine they fix the timeline but create an injustice situation. Like they won't perfectly fix everything at the end of season 1. Like Superman might come back but also be a really twisted version of himself. I don't know how they're going to use him on the TV show. I might just use the titles of my episode videos as like Superman Krypton, just to let people know that this is actually a Superman prequel. Because I think most comic book people know immediately what you're talking about when you talk about Krypton, but I am a bit dubious about the awareness of just regular TV show watchers. There's a lot of people that just watch the TV shows and don't read the comics. So no worries, we'll figure it out as we go along. But the major thing about the series that they revealed recently is that the city where this is all taking place, wait for it, is Kandor City, which is why I immediately thought Brainiac a while ago, like before they announced him. I'm like, well, they're doing Kandor City. The big bad looks kind of like Brainiac. They're probably doing Brainiac. I love the imagery of it actually already being bottled up. Now this just looks like a city shield. It doesn't look like it's actually been shrunk down. So this might be what it looks like while it's on Krypton. But if you're not familiar with Kryptonian society, they're ruled by an oligarchy, so this ruling council is just made up by people of the most powerful houses. So your family's political power is directly tied to the standing your family is in. And when the series picks up, because of Brainiac's machinations, the House of L kind of sounds like it gets thrown under the bus. And if you recognize Barristan Selmy here, he actually plays the protagonist's grandfather. So this is Seg-El, he's Superman's grandfather. When the series picks up, he's close to Clark Kent's age at the beginning of Smallville, probably a little bit older. He's in a relationship with Lita Zod, who's part of the military guild. If you're at least a little familiar with Kryptonian backstory, the House of Zod is largely part of the military guilds. So most houses tend to belong to a single guild, like a family just has a certain level of tradition, like, oh, I've always been part of this guild, so my children will become part of this guild. So Barristan Selmy is playing his grandfather, and he's the person to first start pushing into Phantom Zone technology. So, like for instance, they have Fort Roz as a location on the series, but at this point in the timeline, it's still being used as a traditional military base. If you watch Supergirl, they actually brought the actress that played Ursa from the Christopher Reeve Superman films back for an episode. It was literally titled Fort Roz.
Daughter of Allura.
Jinder Kal-Raz?
You know I am, and yet you ask. Uncertainty will be your doom, not Greenstone.
But eventually what happened is before the destruction of Krypton, Jor-El perfected Phantom Zone technology, and they started using that to house all their criminals. So Fort Roz became this old relic prison where they just left people to rot, and it would just orbit around Krypton. So that's how they used it on the Supergirl TV show. We've talked about Adam Strange. He's from present day. Obviously, something happens and he recognizes that Superman was erased from history, so he races back into Krypton's past using Zeta Beam technology to warn Seg-El about what happens to Superman and sort of has to explain to him why it's so important that he fix the timeline. The way they talk about the Fortress of Solitude is that it's been in their family for a long, long time, and their ancestors at various points were inventors. It just houses all of their creations. But let me know what you think of Brainiac. I don't know which networks are airing the show internationally, so if you live in a country where it's not available, you'll just have to seek other means for finding the show. I think we all know what that means. I'm working on some more Black Panther 2, Wally West Flash related stuff while you wait for that. Thank you so much for watching. Everybody stay awesome. I'll see you guys tonight.